Hi, everyone. In case you don't know me, my name is John. I work in the circulation department at the main library. The children's department asked me to make a video for you guys, and other than a story time or a science project or singing, which you definitely don't want, I decided to introduce a hobby of mine that I've picked up recently, and it's called pyrography. Consists of two words, a prefix and a suffix. The prefix pyro means fire. You may have heard the word pyrotechnics, which refers to fireworks or other fire-based light shows. And the suffix graphy, which means writing. You may have seen the word photography, which of course is basically a kind of artwork as well. Now, the interesting thing about pyrography is that it only requires two things. It requires a heat source as your tool, and as your canvas, just basically a piece of wood. So here's something that I did about maybe 4 or 5 months ago. Pretty simple picture. Highly recommend Googling pyrography, and you can see all the great artwork that people have done using it. I have some friends who are also pyrographers who've done work that ranges from very simple, again, like what I've done here, to very complex, almost looking like photo landscapes, etc. So again, Google pyrography, and you can see some really great professional examples of work out there. Now let me cut to my desktop here. By the way, I'm in my apartment right now. This is kind of the crafting area that my wife and I kind of created in our apartment here. But I'm going to cut to my desktop here, and we're going to go over the kinds of things that you need in order to be a pyrographer. Okay, so welcome to my messy crafting desk here. So what you need for pyrography, as I mentioned, you do need a heat source, which kind of acts as your pen or paintbrush, so to speak. So I have here a pyrography tool that I bought at a craft store for around $20. It's pretty handy. It's got a heat adjustment. It's got tips that you can remove and replace. It comes with about maybe 8 or 9 tips. Some of them are for writing, some are for shading. It's really handy. I do have another more professional tool here. It's right here. It might be a little difficult to see, but you can see here that it's basically a base unit here. Has a power switch here, which I can turn on. It does have heat adjustment, and it does have right here. You can see see that the pen plugs in here, and the pen is attached to the side unit here, so right there. And just like the other pyrography tool, I can actually change the kind of tip that I want. But instead of actually changing the tip, let me turn this off because it's probably already hot. I can actually change the pen itself. So just pull out there, and I'm going to just plug in another one here. You can see that. And that right there, that's a spoon shader. It's called that kind of tip. This one is more for writing. Okay, so it's two different kinds of tips. Another tool that I use, let me put this aside. I'll bring it back in a little bit. Another tool that I use, for example, for backgrounds is a pencil torch. Um, Unlike the two tools I just showed you, which are electrical, um, you see the AC adapter here. This one you have to fill with butane, and you can use it. It's basically like a torch or a lighter, I guess you could say. And you can really darken like a really wide surface area of wood. So it's really convenient, again, if you're doing backgrounds. Okay. Um, I guess it's probably a good time to mention something about safety because, as I mentioned, you are handling these different kinds of heat sources. So it's pretty important to maintain safety at all times. For example, now, actually in pyrography, you should always start using lower temperatures before you go to higher temperatures because you can imagine if you write something with a higher temperature and you think, well, that's a little too dark, well, there's not a whole lot you can do to de-shade that, unfortunately. But of course, if you start with a lower temperature, you can, for example, think, well, that should be darker. Well, of course, you just can just crank up the temperature a little bit and just go over that area again. So usually it's the case that when you start with a lower temperature that you're not generating a lot of smoke. Um, but in the case in which you are using higher temperatures, you might generate a little bit of smoke. Therefore, it might be a good idea to do pyrography outside or in a garage, a very controlled area in which things won't catch on fire, or in which you are in an area where the smoke will not bother you or bother other people or your pets, etc. So what a lot of pyrographers do when they're working with higher temperatures is they might use a mask. Here's a standard face mask. I know you probably have many of these around your home. We've had to use these a lot for shelter in place. You can also use a higher grade respirator like I have here. I think this one was like maybe $30, $40 at the local Home Depot. You might also want to use a fan to sort of deflect the smoke away from things. So I have a small USB fan here, which you can't really see completely, but I sometimes keep this on my desk to blow the smoke away. And of course, I'm not sure if it showed up in my the first part of my video, but my desk here is very close to a window, which again can air out all the smoke that any of my pyrography might create. But again, if you're starting with lower temperatures, you shouldn't be generating too much smoke, which is nice. So back to the canvas. As I said, canvas is basically something that you're going to write on. It's wood for the most part. I mean, pyrography, people also use leather, boards. These are all things that you can buy at craft stores, online, etc. But in the case of pyrography, generally it's wood. And I do want to note again for safety purposes, there are certain kinds of wood that you cannot use. Now, typical woods, for example, like pine, basswood, birch, maple, those are all woods that we can use with pyrography. But treated woods, for example, particle board or MDF, those are woods you cannot use in pyrography. The reason is because those woods have been chemically treated. Um, if you use your heat source or your pyrography pen and you write on those kinds of woods, it can actually cause toxic fumes. So again, go to your craft store and pick up craft wood. Well, here's something that I did actually a couple weeks ago just for fun. But basswood in particular is my favorite wood to use. Now, one thing with wood, unfortunately, is that unlike, for example, paper, oops, sorry about that, wood has grain, so it gets kind of rough. So before you actually write on the wood using your pyrography tool, then you want to sand the wood. So I usually have 3 or 4 different kinds of sandpaper. This is only one particular size. I think this is a very low grit. It's a 220. You might want to get maybe 3 or 4 different grits of sandpaper and prepare the wood by basically sanding the heck out of it. So, you want to make it as smooth and easy to write on as possible. Um, and then once you have a nice smooth piece of wood, then what I do is I get a picture, for example, from the internet, something that's possibly royalty free. Well, obviously, I don't make any profit on my work, but for example, something like this. Imagine from the three other pieces that I showed you, that I really love Boston Terriers. I have one myself. But anyway, so we would use this, um, print it out, cut it to the size of the wood, and then underneath here I have a piece of, you can use either carbon paper or graphite paper, both of which are very easy to find online or again at craft stores. Then you can just go ahead, tape the picture over the carbon or graphite paper and then to the wood. And then what you would need is a stylus of some sort. You can also just use, for example, a pen or a pencil, maybe, and just go ahead and basically outline the picture that you're doing, keeping in mind all the spots that you're going to darken or keep light. So let me show you something that I had actually done just last night. Here we go. So again, we have the picture, and then we have the graphite paper, and then of course the sanded down piece of wood. And like I said last night, I already traced out the picture to what I want to do. So I'm going to remove the picture here, and there we go. Nice and easy. You can see there's some smudges of the graphite paper around here, but that can easily be erased or sanded off later. But we have the outline here, and this is what I'm going to work on today. So I'm going to switch camera angles again, and I'll show you a video of me at work. It's going to be a time-lapse video because obviously this is going to take me about 30 or 40 minutes to do. And then when I'm done, I'll show you what the finished product looks like, and I'll give you a little more information about pyrography. Okay, so stay tuned. Well, hello and welcome back. So here is the finished piece. It's not too bad. I rushed it a little bit. It's only actually took me about 20 minutes to do. But I'm probably going to go over it one more time with a little more shading, especially in the body of the Boston Terrier here. You might also notice that I added a little pink in the ears. I basically just used a pastel crayon to fill that in, just to give it a little pop of color. But overall, it came out okay, I think. And what I'll probably do later is put a finish on it, like a spray lacquer or something. Hopefully, I'll have someone use it as an actual drink coaster, which would be pretty cool. So, a couple of things that I want to mention that I didn't in the early video is that you might notice that when you're using a pyrography tool, your finger is pretty close to the heat source. Now there is a finger guard on this particular pen, but some tools don't really have suitable finger guards, so they do sell gloves or individual finger guards that kind of look like rubber thimbles, basically, to help protect your fingers from the heat. I don't use one because basically if I start getting too hot, I just basically take a little break. It takes like about 15, 20, 30 minutes before, I can actually feel any heat. And again, I just take a short break anyway. Um, Another thing I wanted to mention is that in the case of wood, there are many different types of wood, not just these small coaster types, but also things like basically something that like a portrait size canvas of wood here. This is something I bought at a craft store. We also have things with argent pieces here with kind of fancy cotton borders here. And as I showed you earlier with my early piece, you have this kind of cool cross sections of cut from a tree, which have the bark border. And a lot of people like that. It gives your piece a kind of rustic look. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it inspires you to maybe give pyrography a try. It is a lot of fun. For those of you who are already artistically talented or inclined, people who do, for example, charcoal work or pen work, then basically you've already got a leg up on this particular artwork because it's basically the same way of producing the art, which I kind of like. When I was younger, I was into charcoal a lot, and I feel that the two kinds of art are very similar, although I'm not as talented as maybe I used to be when I was younger. So anyway, again, my name is John. I work in the circulation department at Maine. We hope to see you at the library again soon. Thanks for checking out my video, and maybe in the near future I'll be able to produce a video for you again. Have a nice day. Goodbye.